a couple other presenters that have been waiting patiently too. So trying to
Sure.
keep things going. Thank you again, Juan and Lana. That was really a nice update.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now we've got someone from Tree Keepers to speak with us here, Will Koomjian. Welcome, Will.
Hi.
How's it going? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy to do it. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think what I'd like to do is if anybody has questions, you can just ask them while I'm talking. I always appreciate the back and forth because I don't do Zoom very often and I feel a little bit weird like talking into a computer screen when I'm alone in my office. I don't know if anybody else gets that. Cool. So I just want to talk a little bit about some of the sort of lasting effects that we're seeing from the January storm that we had. I'm sure everybody is aware that the storm that we had in mid-January was a really significant tree failure event in some of the more hard-hit areas in Portland. We're considering it as like a once in a generation event, meaning that it's probably the most significant tree failure event that those neighborhoods had in 30 plus years. And if if you're not in one of those neighborhoods or you didn't see it, trust me, I was out there every day and it was really shocking and unprecedented. And I've been doing tree work in the Portland area for 20 years, completely unlike anything we've seen before. So in addition to the trees that were blown down by the wind, we have a lot of trees that suffered damage that are still standing. And there are a lot of questions that are being answered, both because of standing damaged trees and also because trees are growing in environments that have been drastically changed. You know, you have trees that have grown up in a dense forest, all the other trees have blown down. Even if that tree isn't damaged, it's growing in a different environment that can make it vulnerable. So there are a lot of people out there that are struggling with, you know, how do I understand these trees which are still standing? Are they safe? Are they not safe? Have they been damaged? Or are they fine? In that environment, you know, folks like myself are struggling to get to everybody to answer all of these questions. There are a lot of folks, unfortunately, a lot of shady or ignorant operators out there giving people wrong answers or answers that they're not qualified to give. So, you know, I can't teach you in a 10-minute Zoom meeting how to understand sort of the process of tree risk assessment or everything that I look at for my, you know, decades of experience. But I can give you a few pointers just to understand sort of how to be a savvy homeowner and not make bad decisions or not be taken advantage of by unscrupulous contractors. You know, the most basic thing to say is just only work with people that you trust, and be careful who you trust. The best way to get a good arborist in your corner, like any contractor really, is to get a reference from somebody who knows. That doesn't mean just Ed down the street has a buddy. That means somebody who has some sort of knowledge of that field, ideally, or somebody who has a long working relationship with their contractor. Those are the best sources of references. And then if you get that reference, talk to multiple people and get references, you know, cross-check those. If you hear a company is good, ask the other person who knows, do you think they're good? You can research on the internet. That's one way, you know, look people up. I think that the utility of that is probably less than most people think it is. Some larger companies will have a big footprint and you can, look them up and see that they're legit. But a lot of less than good companies can have a similar looking appearance on the internet. And also some of the best people out there are small independent companies that might not have much of any footprint on the internet. So, looking people up, researching them from your computer, sure, do it, but it may not get you everything. One good thing that you can do from your computer is you can check your licenses. So you can check either on the Construction Contractors Board, the CCB, or the Landscape Contractors Board, the LCB. You can check somebody's license number to make sure that they have an active license. The license both tells you that they're serious, but it also tells you that their license is active so that if there's a problem that you as a consumer will be protected. You can also check ISA, International Society of Arboriculture certifications. Those are basically your educational credentials that say that you know what you're talking about trees. You want to check those and make sure that the person that you're talking to has a certification either as a certified arborist or board certified master arborist, ideally. And if they're talking to you about tree safety and tree risk, they should also have a tree risk assessment qualification from ISA. That's a specific program that they do that qualifies you to talk about questions of tree risk. I would say that those things, being a certified arborist or a master arborist and having your tree risk assessment qualification, those are kind of table stakes, right? That sort of tells you that somebody is serious. It doesn't tell you for sure that they know what they're talking about. You shouldn't just trust somebody because they have those certifications, but it does tell you that they're legit. Got a question?
So, yeah. So, Will, what are some of the specific acts you're seeing that some of the more unscrupulous arborists are?
Oh, how long you got?
I hit the highlights.
In the immediate, well, let me give you sort of one extreme example. In the immediate aftermath of the storm, we had storm chasing crews in from all over the US, including many from Florida and the Southeast. These storm chaser crews are set up for to come together to respond to hurricanes out there, and they'll come wherever there's a natural disaster. And when they run out of legitimate disaster response, they knock on doors. And we had literally guys from Florida knocking on doors and telling people that their Douglas firs are dangerous. What a guy from Florida knows about Douglas firs is a mystery to me, but I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And then we have everything from that to crews coming in from outside the area, trying to get in on the work. There's just a ton of work and it brings people from all over. And some of them are very good. They're doing good work. They're responding when there's a need. And some of them are unscrupulous and using fear to sell tree removals. And it's really a shame. So this is where, it's really important to be educated as a consumer and not be taken advantage of. Looks like there's a question from Ron.
Yeah,
Well, I wouldn't say it's a question, it's an observation of what happened during the event and what I see afterwards. I'm dating myself, but a lot of parallels of what I have seen here that occurred in this area during an event called the Columbus Day Storm.
Yeah, and talking about the nature of the storm that we just experienced, we're thinking about this as in a similar class to the Columbus Day storm and the 1998 flooding and storms in terms of tree failure. A once in a generation, really serious weather event. So I just want to get into a few things. I see Stan has a question here, but let me get into a few things, and then I can take some more questions. So again, ISA certification, certified arborist, tree risk assessment qualification, that's table stakes, licensing. All of that is kind of a baseline. It doesn't mean that you should just sort of trust what that person says. If somebody tells you something that doesn't seem right, or just in general, if you're making an important decision, always get a second opinion. Always get a second opinion, and try to get a second opinion from somebody who's coming from a different field, right? If you're talking to a guy that runs a tree service, maybe get a consulting arborist. If you're talking to, a logger, you definitely want to get an arborist in there. So one thing I want to point out that I think is really important is that there's a real difference in how tree services operate in unincorporated Washington County versus the city of Portland. Within the city of Portland, you have Title 11. Tree removal permits are required for most trees. Basically all street trees and all private property trees above 12 inches. There are other situations where it might even be lower than that, but basically all big trees in private property, you're going to need a permit in the city of Portland. That does provide some level of protection for consumers, and it changes the way that tree services operate. Basically, if you're a tree service in the city of Portland, there are things that that you will be checked up on by a city inspector, right? You have to get a permit. If you're saying that a tree is dangerous, somebody at the city who is qualified to judge that is going to be checking your work. And that changes what people say, frankly, if they know that they're not saying something that's correct. One thing that I would point out, though, is that there are a lot of situations in the city of Portland where the city will grant you a permit regardless of, for a different reason. Say, like, the tree's within 10 feet of a building, the tree is a species that's listed as a noxious species, things like that, right? So if you have a tree that you like, but somebody tells you that maybe it's dangerous, they could potentially get a permit approved for reasons that have nothing to do with whether or not it's dangerous. So again, work with somebody that you trust, get a second opinion. The City of Portland Tree Code does provide you some protection, but it's not total protection. The last thing that I want to say is that if you are talking with somebody, what you want to look for, if somebody is giving you an assessment of the safety of a tree that might affect you, they should be using industry standard language, and they should be able to ground what they're saying in observable things that you can see as well. So if I'm saying that a tree has damage to its root zone, which is something that we're seeing a lot from the storm, I should be able to show you what I'm seeing, tell you in industry standard language what I'm seeing and why I'm interpreting that as creating a hazard. If somebody can't do that, or they sound like they're spitballing, they use one term one time, then they use a different term, and they're kind of, just sound like they're kind of spinning a yarn, then they may be actually spinning a yarn, and you should be careful if you are trusting what that person is saying. If you can't tell, in clear language that is industry standard what you're seeing, and you can't ground that in observable facts, then you may not be qualified to be making those sorts of recommendations. So I think that's all that I have. I'm open to questions. Stan, it looks like you have a question.
Oh, I'm worse than that. In the couple streets near where I live, we had last year several incidences of it's not a blue spruce, but it's something similar to it that snapped about 15, 20 feet above the ground and fell. Then we had another tree that was a pin oak that was planted poorly because there was a cement walls that were on two sides of it that I believe is what caused it to fail in a rather low level.
Stan, I don't want to cut you off there, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to do the tree version of like car talk, right? Where you like we try to diagnose a tree over like a Zoom meeting because that doesn't work. So, I want to talk about sort of general things, but I can't diagnose or really tell
Oh,
you
I'm not
like
trying to get
specific
you
trees.
I'm not trying to get you to diagnose. I'm just the examples I'm giving you are the we had 4 trees fall on our property. 2 of them hit our house. Two of the trees were the same types of trees that fell last year. So I don't trust those trees that remain in our yard because of their failures. The fourth one was a fir-like tree, and it too was positioned poorly next to a driveway and the road, and I don't think the root system was sufficient to keep it upright. So there are a lot of conditions which I'm supporting what you're talking about, is that you do need experts that understand what it takes for a tree to withstand these types of events that should be part of the questionnaire from someone that's just walking up to you and saying, hey, that tree needs to come down, blah, blah, blah. It takes a lot to figure out why and what needs to occur. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, it really does. And there's a lot that goes into it. The fact of the matter is that not every tree failure is predictable, especially when we get a, once in a generation storm. We had a lot of tree failures of trees that had no, observable defects in them and, trees that were completely strong and healthy came down. So, and anybody, worth their salt should be able to tell you that and tell you, hey, I can help you mitigate the risk from predictable tree failures, but we have to understand that there are going to be tree failures that are not predictable. So yeah, it sounds like, it sounds like you should take my advice and find an arborist, because it sounds like maybe there's some ongoing issues there.
Well, thanks very much, Will. I'm gonna let you off the hook here. We have another